What happened to the bully in your class? Story 1. She did an insane amount of growing up during college, including having to uproot her whole life to care for her family after her mom died suddenly. She reached out to me and others I know personally and directly addressed the bullying. We went out to lunch, she bought, and she was incredibly honest, apologizing and acknowledging what she did and why it was wrong. She's now running a successful animal rescue organization with her long-term boyfriend, and I wish her nothing but happiness. Story 2. His father was caught stealing millions from the community. Dad was a wealth manager, and all his clients were friends and neighbors in a sort of small town. The family was really put through the ringer of embarrassment, and the bully was a wreck for a long time. I guess he realized all the wealth and arrogance that he grew up with was stolen from everyone he knew. I saw him years later, and it was like seeing a different person. He had changed his name, walked differently, and held himself with a different posture. We spoke for a few minutes, and it was almost like he was genuinely interested in me. He didn't go out and say sorry for what he had done, but it seemed like he wanted to, but though it would be tacky. Maybe I'm reading too much into that interaction, but it was a little weird. It was like he had been forcing himself to be an actual nice guy. Story 3. After years and years of being bullied in middle and high school by one particular guy, I took my dad's lawnmower in to get serviced, and look who we have here. Good old racist fuckboy. Sean walks up to the counter covered in dirt and oil and sweat. He immediately knew who I was. Funny thing is, I hated this dude for so long. I even had a vision on snatching him by his shirt over the counter and beating his face into the ground. I was skinny skater punk now. Nothing was said between us during that interaction other than the services I needed. When I went to go pick the lawnmower up a week later, he asked me to step outside. In my mind, I'm thinking, this is it. I'm going pummel this dude. He lit up a cigarette and for about 15 minutes, apologized for how he treated me in middle school and high school. He told me about how he was brought up and he's never been as tough as he came up. After high school, he went in the military and was forced to work with other races. He even explained that his hatred towards people that weren't white faded away BC of the Marines. He said he had been fucked over more by his own race than others, and started to think about his ideology. He is a humble guy now, with regret, but is man enough to admit his faults. We shook hands and even hugged. I haven't seen him in about 10 years, but if I do see him again, I still shake his hand. Story 4. The autistic kid beat him in Spanish class within an inch of his life. Flipped over the desk, picked this dude's body up and slammed him, kidneys first, into one of the legs. Johnny was just your normal, happy-go-lucky video game fan. We went to see the original Mortal Kombat movie in theaters when it came out. It was my second movie-going experience. I was just a newly transplanted immigrant, and Johnny was the only kid who didn't pick on me. He was cool. Johnny was heavy-set with glasses. Juan was a gangbanger, real cholo-looking dude. He and his friends were pretty terroristic. In retrospect, I'm sure Juan had a terrible upbringing because he took it out on everyone around him. For months, he kept picking on Johnny. Months. Juan was a scary guy, and I had gotten into my share of scraps, but I wanted no part of this guy. This abuse went unchecked. Juan broke John's glasses, and it was just persistent. I don't remember all of it, other than Johnny just became more and more reclusive with time, and he was always bruised in some way, shape, or form. One day, in Spanish class, Juan said something to Johnny about his mom. This was before the bell rang for class to start. This was the final straw. I remember John letting out this guttural, primal scream and lunging from his desk toward Juan. Johnny began hammer-fisting Juan all over the head, his shoulders, arms, like fucking Goro would in MK, just unleashing everything he had on this asshole gangbanger. There came a point when Juan looked out of it, like a limp noodle, and that was when John, still possessed by this unrelenting rage, flips the desk over and underhand flips body slams Juan into one of the legs of the desk. Juan let out this horrible cry of agony, and that was that. The teacher walks in, they call the campus police, and the rest is a blur. I don't remember what happened to John after this, as I never saw him again, but I do remember hearing from an acquaintance back several years that Juan was in jail for aggravated robbery. Guess he didn't learn his lesson. Thank you, Johnny, for being a friend, and for not judging me while I learned the language here and adjusted to my new life. I hope all is well with you. Story 5. Oh, I have the best one for this, guys. Promise. So my bully was a guy, I'm a sheik, and he was relentless. From kindergarten through middle school, peaked in middle school. He would stick his leg out and trip me when I would walk by, then laugh. Crap like that. He annoyed everyone, imposed on your personal space, would tell lots about me to others so they would not like me. It really bothered me deeply, BC. I could not understand what I had done to have someone so adamant about humiliating and hurting me, publicly. Well, after middle school, he disappeared to some other school, and I slowly repressed it all and forgot of him in my active thoughts. Then I get my first apartment with a friend and a real job and going to college. I'm sitting on my new couch in my new place watching To Catch a Predator, like everyone did back then. Next up on To Catch a Predator, and I hear his name. I hear that jerk-off's name. And there he is walking in to meet an underage girl he has very disgusting text convos with. I could not believe it. I stood up and screamed aloud. I felt so vindicated for the feelings of hatred and inability to forgive him as a younger girl. Justice served. Story 6. Mine always bullied everyone who wasn't a football player, jock, or cowboy. He honed in on me because I was a nerd and more feminine. Turns out he had major regrets about everything, and at his last class reunion, he was 2 years ahead of me. He tried apologizing to people, and a lot of people wouldn't forgive him for what he did. A lot of it was borderline charges should have been filed type stuff. He made a couple kids suicidal. Well, after a lot of people wouldn't take his apology, I guess he went into a major depression and ended up hanging himself and left a letter stating that he hated who he was and how he treated people and the pain he inflicted on everyone and that he couldn't live with himself anymore. The really sad thing is, I did run into him not too long before this and he did apologize to me, which I'm surprised he recognized me because I am female presenting now. And I accepted it and told him I didn't hold anything against him. He really seemed sincere and that he changed. But I understand how some couldn't forgive the trespasses he made upon them. Sad all the way around. This is why everyone just needs to be nice to everyone, even if you don't like them, like what they do, or whatever. These stories always end in unnecessary sadness or end of life. Story 7. I was the bully. Actually, I got bullied first for my weight, and then realized that I am stronger than 90% of my peers and simply counter-bullied. I thought people would respect me if they know I will beat them up if they bully me. I was a child, like literally 10 years old. With 14, I had the realization that nobody was ever truly my friend. They just smiled at me, so I am nice to them. Made me work on myself a lot and be very self-critical. I am 30 now and completely in harmony with who I am. Last fight I got into is over a decade old, and it was with a guy who SA'd my ex-girlfriend. I try to be a good person every day. I always offer my help, I am there for others, and I love making other people happy. 180-degree turn, you could say,